Enter the slave trade. So since the year 1500, the Portuguese had been shipping a few enslaved Africans to the Caribbean. When so many indigenous laborers died, and the indentured servant thing wasn't really going to work out so well, European mine and plantation owners began to import many more enslaved Africans. The slave trade had existed in African society for sure, long before. Sometimes when certain African kingdoms would conquer other ones, they would take some slaves. And the European countries of Portugal, England, France, and the Netherlands took full advantage of this. They built relationships with these African rulers who were willing to trade slaves. These European merchants established trading posts on the coast of Africa, and they set up a system in which Africans gathered slaves, and the Europeans sent them over to the Americas. So the loss of millions of Africans to the slave trade tore African societies apart, as you might well imagine. If all of a sudden families were ripped apart, villages were ripped apart, and kingdoms were decimated. The slave trade was super crucial to the development of European economies. Okay, this wasn't just something on the side like, oh, we happen to be making some money off of this. How great. No, it was central to it. The Spanish took literally billions of dollars worth of silver out of South America using slave labor. Spain, Portugal, and other European countries grew and harvested billions of dollars worth of sugar, tobacco, and cotton from the Indies and other parts of the Americas. And after paying for slaves and paying for the ships to ship the goods, all of that was pure profit, right? They took the land and they took the people. And so then they were able to sell this at pure profit. The slave trade was at first dominated by Portugal and then by Britain. Portugal and Spain kind of fell off the map in the late 1500s, and then Britain took over. Okay, Britain was one of the last countries before the United States and before Brazil to ban the slave trade in the early 1800s. So the slave trade is one part of the globalizing economy as the economy gets more and more connected around the world. It's part of what we call triangular trade. So I want you to think about the Atlantic Ocean, right? And the countries and the continents that border it. You have North America and South America, and you have Europe and you have Africa. So all around these four continents, all across the Atlantic Ocean, sugar, silver, tobacco, slaves, textiles, weapons, rum, tobacco are flying from continent to continent. Except they're on ships, so they're shipping from continent to continent. Merchants, bankers, shipbuilders, slavers, and plantation owners are making an unbelievable amount of money, and some of those fortunes continue to exist in some ways today. So European exploration, conquest, and European exploration, conquest, and colonization of the Americas affected all four continents bordering the Atlantic Ocean. So this resulted in a distinct Atlantic world in which European states used the people and the resources of the Americas and Africa to boost their own economies. Throughout the Americas, indigenous peoples and Africans brought as slaves suffered under the dominating European slave trade. And what we've learned today, it's all from a very European perspective, okay? With the exception of the little bit that I just said, we were talking about why the Europeans traded slaves, why the Europeans came over. So next, we are going to be looking at the human consequences of these European choices, the horrifying consequences and the horrifying experience of the Middle Passage across the Atlantic.